Tune back in for this free presentation. And I see we're recording. Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. I will see you around 8.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
Hey, I just want to do a quick sound check.
All right.
Let's see here. There we go. Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay. Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay. Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Just one more thing.
I hear tap tap.
Okay, great. Good.
Still hear it.
Okay, good. Great. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for joining me this evening. We will begin in just a few minutes. Yay! Welcome to the farm. Hey! It is July 4th, 2013, and Michael and I are headed to Palo Alto. Woo! 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 We are so excited. We are going to go get some sun. We're going to have some fun in the sun with my hubby. Hubby and I are headed to Palo Alto. Woo! We got our shorts. Yeah! And we're going to have fun. Fun, fun, fun. You know, if you grow up in San Francisco, if this is where you live, you don't get a lot of sunshine on July 4th, right? So we want a real 4th of July sunshine fest. So we are going south to Palo Alto. We're going to follow the sun. So we ride our bikes down to the Caltrain station in San Francisco, and we put the bikes on the train. Oh, it is so much fun to ride that train. It is so romantic. It's like an old style train. You can hear the sound of the train on cross tracks, and you get the bell, bing, 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 and the whistle, boom, boom, boom. It's just like a real train. It is so happy. A romantic 4th of July outing. And when we get to Palo Alto, we get off and we ride up University Avenue. Oh, the sun feels incredible. We have made the right decision. We stop and we have some Mediterranean food. Perfect for this weather. We are in the Mediterranean. Then we get back onto University Avenue and we start riding up University Avenue. And soon we are there. We are on Palm Drive. We are on the farm, AKA Stanford University. This is it. It's great. Southern California is right here at Stanford. This is Los Angeles done right. The palm trees, the beautiful architecture, the weather, the heat, the immaculate landscape. Southern California begins in Palo Alto and it doesn't get any better. Woo! This is a real 4th of July. Yes, it is. But what else? What else have we come for other than the weather? Well, if you know the Stanford campus, you know it's full of free museums. The museums are all free and open to the public. So we ride around to all the museums and they are glorious. You see, we love museums. I love them personally because it was like my development as a reader. You know, I was a late reader. I was really slow getting started reading, but I love to hang out in libraries. I love to look at books, but I would just look at the pictures, history books, those big, beautiful pictures. And eventually I got frustrated looking at the pictures. So I started to read the captions. Yeah. And then that didn't tell me enough. So I started to read the text, and that was my journey. Pictures and text and pictures. That has always been a book for me, right? And that's how I got into reading books that were just text, that journey through them. And that's what a museum is for me. It's like walking into a book. You're entering a book, text and pictures and text and the whole thing. And those Stanford museums are exquisite. The Cantor Center for Visual Arts, unbelievable. You walk in and there's a big block of text right on the wall. Then you enter the gallery and there are all those wonderful paintings. And underneath each one of them is a caption, which explains the painting, its influences, what it was trying to do, who painted it, when, who donated it, when. It's amazing. It's the best thing ever. We're walking inside a book at the Cantor Center for Visual Arts. And you know what? The first painting you see there is very, very moving because it's a painting of the boy who named the campus. He didn't even know he was naming it because he was dead when it was named. Leland Stanford Jr. He died as a young man. He was 15. You can see it. He's kind of pale in the picture. He looks sickly. His parents took him to Europe to get him ready for college, to take him on the grand tour. Leland and Jenny Stanford, they took little Leland Jr. to Europe. He contracted typhus and he died. They were heartbroken. It was their only kid. They spent 18 years trying to have a kid, and this was the only kid they had. And now he was dead. So they named a campus out of him. They took their 8,000 acres in Palo Alto, which they called the farm, and they turned it into Stanford University as a tribute to their little boy who could never go to school. It is so moving to see this painting. And then you go next door, and there's another spectacular museum right next door, the Anderson Collection. This is one of the great modern and contemporary art collections in California, maybe in the country. It is spectacular. The first time I went there with Michael, they had an exhibition of Nick Cave's sound suits. Incredible! With videos of him inside the sound suits dancing. It was great, the most beautiful things ever. You go up the stairs, at the top of the stairs is a Jackson Pollock drip painting. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And that is also the museum where I discovered Robert Graham and all those erotic, sensual sculptures of his. Oh my God, the stuff in that museum is great, but it's not just that in those two museums. There is art all over the campus. It is all free and open to the public. You can do whatever you want. We rode up to the Herbert Hoover Memorial Exhibition Hall, this little pavilion, and inside of it is this incredible collection of graphic art, posters from the Romanov era in Russia, recruitment posters from the First World War. The library has prints on display. The Herbert Hoover Institute in its lobby has a rare book collection with more of those great captions, books and text, pictures and text. It's incredible everywhere. And there's student art. They have an undergraduate program and an MFA graduate program in art, and there's art everywhere that the students have created, and then the best ever, right outside where anybody can see it any time of day or night, world-class sculptures. Look at this. Look at this. This is a George Segal. It's called Gay Liberation. There's a gay male couple and a lesbian couple right there at the quadrangle in the center of the university. I felt so welcome. Me and Michael, we're gay. Look at this. Stanford must love us. And also, so moving. Andy Goldsworthy's tribute to all the buildings that were damaged, destroyed during the Loma Prieta earthquake. This beautiful snake made from rubble from those buildings. Incredible. A huge granite clock by Maya Lin called The Timetable. And it's not just the artwork, there's also architecture everywhere, the most spectacular contemporary architecture you can imagine. $500 million buildings by Norman Foster, a lab by Norman Foster. Incredible. A Ricardo Legarreta building, an I.M. Pei engineering building, a Diller and Scafidio art building, an extension to the museum by Polshek. It is incredible, and it's all right there for you to look at. You can just ride around and stare at this stuff. Amazing. And then there's the classical architecture, the old architecture from Stanford. Arthur Brown's incredible Herbert Hoover Institute, that huge tower, the symbol of the university, the greatest landscape architect of all time, Frederick Law Olmsted. He did that beautiful Palm Drive. You're on his property. The second greatest landscape architect of all time, Thomas Church, did malls. Also that incredible quadrangle at the center, off that beautiful sandstone, and the Memorial Chapel with those phenomenal mosaics. So beautiful. There's a Frank Lloyd Wright building on campus. And then, of course, a local favorite, John Carl Warnicki's Kappa Alpha fraternity. It is all there. It is amazing. And it just goes on and on and on. We love it. One of my favorite buildings ever. Oh my God, the hospital done by Edward Durrell Stone. Beautiful. We also had a great time off campus. You see, what we do is at the last minute, we book a hotel. So we got a great, great rate. And we booked the Crown Plaza Hotel in Palo Alto. That's where the Beatles stayed. How exciting is that? When they came to the Bay Area, they stayed at the Crown Plaza. And we bike all over Palo Alto. It's flat and warm. You go everywhere in your shorts. It's great. You just soak up the rays and they power you forward. You're like a little solar unit being driven through the city. These beautiful parks that fill blocks, beautiful green lawns, soaring redwood trees, water fountains that work, toilets that are clean. It's incredible. And the domestic architecture is wonderful. Eichlers everywhere, those great 50s buildings, Willis Polk's, Bernard Mabeck's, more Frank Lloyd Wright, all domestic, all there, Professorville, incredible. And then the Palo Alto YMCA. I love to swim at the Y. I swim every single day. I did before COVID every day, and I got to go to the Palo Alto YMCA because my membership was good there. See, I was a member in San Francisco at the Embarcadero YMCA, and that place is great. I love it. But the people there are like these really tough urban men. They're like, I'm ready for my swim. I'm gonna take my swim. Okay, here I come. I'm gonna get in the pool. I do the backstroke. That way I don't have to put out my cigarette. When I finish a lap, I turn the edge of the pool into my ashtray. It's wonderful. But at the Palo Alto YMCA, there's no cigarettes in the pool. It's all families. It's like a suburban wonderland, Palo Alto. And you ride downtown and there's more art. They have an outlet of the world famous Pace Gallery in Palo Alto, right there in Palo Alto. The first time we walked in, David Hockney's everywhere, right there. We were this close to them. We could have bought them if we had billions of dollars. We could have touched them because, everybody thinks we're from Palo Alto. That's okay. Touch the Hockneys. It's fine. Also, the food is amazing. Delfino's is one of the best restaurants in the city. The pizzas are incredible. But if you go to Delfino's in the city, you have to wait for an hour in line. In Stanford, in Palo Alto, you just walk right in. It's incredible. And then my favorite thing of all to do is at night, we go to the Stanford Movie Theater right in the middle of Palo Alto University. And this is like an old time movie palace, right? And they show classics, 2 a night. The first time we went, it was The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn, and then another Humphrey Bogart special. Yeah, Beat the Devil. It was great. And okay. No. Listen, no. I'm a huge fan of the Castro Theater. No, I am. I'm a good gay man. I am dedicated to Castro. I understand that. But you go and see a movie at the Castro, and it's like these really tough gay guys. They're like, yeah. I know all about Humphrey Bogart. I slept with him in the 50s. Yeah, I did. Katharine Hepburn. No, I never slept with her. My lesbian friend did, but I didn't sleep with her. No, but Humphrey Bogart, we were like this. And when the Mighty Wurlitzer plays at the Castro, these guys are so tough. They're like, oh, come on, get off. I can play the organ better than you. Get off. But in Stanford, it's a special occasion. Everybody's so excited. The whole town turns out. They all line up. They're all excited to buy their tickets. There's like a buzz. They have their little ticket stubs. They go up to the concessions counter and get their Coke and their popcorn. It's so cute. And then they go into the little museum and they look at all those beautiful posters they have. And then they enter the temple. And when the Mighty Wurlitzer plays there, they cheer. They are so happy. And then the guy bows, the organist, and now the feature. And it's like being in church. They're so reverential. You think you're at the opening night of African Queen with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn in the audience. It's amazing. The best place to see old movies. So what is going on here? Michael and I are like old UC Berkeley boys, right? That's where we got our degrees. So what about all this hanging out in Stanford, getting enthused about Stanford and Palo Alto? What's going on? Well, Michael and I, we did everything at Berkeley. Michael was there for 4 years getting his BS, and I was there for 15 years getting my BA, my MA, my PhD, writing and directing plays, teaching classes. And we were living in the city together at the time, hubby and hubby, in the Haight-Ashbury, right? And I was at Berkeley for like 16-hour days. I'd go over in the morning on BART, come home late at night on the last BART train. I was over there forever, and Michael would come visit me. And we'd hang out. We'd have lunches together, and in between classes and rehearsals, he'd hang out with me on the weekends. And we did everything. We did the museums. We saw all the public art. We saw the architecture over and over again. We really did Berkeley. That's where we met when we were 18. Well, he was actually 19, older man, right? We met in Berkeley in the International House. At one point, the International House was called Callahan Hall, named after Admiral Callahan, right? This is a guy who got blown up at the Battle of Guadalcanal. Isn't that romantic? But it was romantic. I saw Michael across that crowded cafeteria the first time. Oh, it was completely special. He was sitting at this long table with all of his friends, and he was at the center of the table, and they were hanging on his every word. He really brought people together and made them feel like they were part of something. He was telling stories and anecdotes and telling jokes, and I was just like, wow. And all I could think the first time I saw him was, wow, what a beautiful smile. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to sit at that table. I wanted to listen to him. I wanted him to call me his friend. I knew if I was his friend, he'd protect me. So I asked my best friend, who was also living in the I house, if he would introduce us. And he said no. He said no. He wouldn't introduce us. I was like, what's that about? I mean, I was brought up right. You don't just introduce yourself to people. You wait for an introduction. But I was like, forget it. I'm not going to wait. So I took my train one night and I just plopped down next to Michael. And I said, hi. And he looked at me and he said, hello. You know, I was raised to believe that there was a huge rivalry between Stanford and Berkeley, right? But as I got older, I realized that that was just propaganda. Because of course, all my family, all the Fishers went to Berkeley, right? They would never go to Stanford. Stanford was too expensive. It was a private school. You could get a great education at Berkeley. That was the bargain, right? And so I was fed the rivalry between the two, the big game, the academics. I was told that. But, you know, according to the New York Times, Stanford might very well be the greatest university on the planet. According to a 2014 New York Times article, it's certainly better than its main United States rival, Harvard. How is that possible? Harvard? Harvard's supposed to be our greatest university. No, not according to the New York Times. In 2014, they said more kids graduating from high school want to go to Stanford than Harvard. Why? Well, livability. Yeah. The kids aren't as pressured at Stanford. They get more nurturing from the star faculty, right? The climate is so much better. It's like the Mediterranean. And also Stanford is at the heart of America's new great industry, Silicon Valley. Yeah, it is right there. It is pumping blood into Silicon Valley. It is the muscle behind Silicon Valley. It is the center. It is making it happen. That's what makes it hot. But is that really true? Is it? Steve Jobs, who invented, Apple and everything else, Steve Jobs gave a commencement speech at one of Stanford's graduation ceremonies. And the first thing he said was, I never graduated from college. I went to Reed College for one semester. And then I dropped out because I didn't think I should be wasting my parents' money on a useless education. I went back the next semester and I audited a class, one class. It was a class in calligraphy. And that's why I have that drop-down menu with all those fonts, because I love calligraphy. And isn't that the cliche of the tech genius, that they don't need college, that they don't go to college, or they drop out pretty quick? Mark Zuckerberg, who went to Stanford's big rival, Harvard, didn't finish. He dropped out as a sophomore to start Facebook, right? You don't need college. What? College is battling over tech geniuses? Okay. Well, let's look at Stanford and let's see what is actually going on in one of those engineering, one of those computer science, one of those buildings where people are thinking on campus. What's going on? There's an associate professor at Stanford, associate professor of Stanford University. His name is Dr. Kaczynski. Working with one of his graduate students, Wang, he has gotten a lot of press attention for a couple of programs he's come up with. The first one is a program that scans Facebook profiles and looks for likes amongst geniuses. And this program determined that if you like curly fries, you're more likely to be a genius. Geniuses like curly fries more than they like regular fries. So if you like curly fries, you're probably a genius, according to Dr. Kaczynski's research. He moved on from that to, this one got a lot of coverage. He moved on from that to developing the Gaydar program. Now, this is a program that can look at your Facebook profile picture and determine whether or not you're gay with a 91% accuracy. How is that possible? Well, it's based on PhD, prenatal hormone therapy, which posits that gay men have gender atypical features. What? This is science? This works? Well, somebody else, a counter researcher said that that's ridiculous. You know why the computer picked out the gay men? Because gay men use better lighting when they do their Facebook profile pictures. That's why it said they were gay, not because of their features. It's ridiculous. And I ask you, what are the implications of this? I mean, suppose a government that hated gay people, that wanted to persecute them, killed them, got their hands on this gaydar. What would they do with it? I mean, Dr. Kaczynski and his graduate student Wang said, oh, this is all in fun, but what is the purpose of it ultimately? I mean, I don't want some computer to be telling me it has better gaydar than I do. I mean, I know about real gaydar. Gaydar is really complicated. I've spent whole years trying to figure out if somebody else is gay, multiple years. Are they gay? Are they straight? Are they straight but having sex with men? Are they gay but having babies? Are they like non-committal, uncooperative celibates? I spend years and don't figure it out. So I don't want some gaydar to be telling me. How can they tell me? It's ridiculous. It's infuriating. Michael couldn't tell about me. He didn't know what I was up to. And, being a little pre-gay myself, I wasn't sure what I was up to either. I didn't know about myself. I was just like an 18-year-old uber virgin. I knew I liked him. I liked him a lot. I liked being around him. And so I invited him out for coffee, which is ridiculous because he was like the most popular guy in the dining hall, right? I mean, it'd be like Cinderella a month before the ball, before the ball, like a month before, like when she's just like a schlump in the corner of the house that she shares with, her evil stepsisters, and they're like spitting on her and throwing trash on her and snot rockets, that's Cinderella. It'd be like if that Cinderella called up the prince and said, hey, do you want to have coffee? He'd be like, no. And he'd like throw her in jail, forget it. But I asked him and, he said yes. So I said, meet me at Cafe Roma. The Cafe Roma is now Cafe Strada, and Strada's Roma. I said, okay, but this is the old Roma. It's the outdoor one when I Bancroft in college. Okay, Cafe Roma. So I said, meet me at Cafe Roma, okay? And he said, yeah. So I walked down the hill from the I House, past the fraternities, and I sat outside at Cafe Roma, and I kind of wondered if he was going to come. I was a little nervous, and he showed up right on time. But he must have been suspicious of me because he actually brought a chaperone. What? He had a chaperone with him. I mean, it was Scott. I mean, Scott was our bud. We love Scott. We've known Scott. We know Scott now, but he had a chaperone. I've never even seen a chaperone before. I mean, I read about it like in Jane Austen, but this was actually a chaperone. He was escorted. We sat down. It was fine. It was a nice warm night. We were all friends. We're surrounded by young people, a city of young people, Berkeley. Across Bancroft is this little lawn and a law school and a fountain, all beautifully lit in the floodlights. It was the best evening for me. I loved it because they laughed at everything I said. I thought, this is perfect. I could spend the rest of my life with this guy. And Scott, if he needs to be there. Okay, I'll spend the rest of my life with both of them, Scott the chaperone. I mean, it'd be nice if Scott went away once in a while, just for a little bit, but it's okay, but it's fine. I was happy. I felt like we were connecting, and I didn't even know how. I didn't know what romance with a guy was, but something was happening right there at Cafe Roma on Bancroft at UC Berkeley. So once a year, after that first 4th of July, Michael and I would go down to Stanford and hang out, stay overnight, get a good deal on a hotel, ride our bikes around. It was great. And we kept going to our favorite places like the Herbert Hoover Institute. Look at that. Arthur Brown's masterpiece. I love it. It's so phallic. It's like the symbol of the university, a palace. But, we also wanted to dig deeper and see other things. See other institutes. So one day I said, well, why don't we go find the MLK Institute, the Institute for Martin Luther King. We saw it on a map. So we rode our bikes around the campus, past the $500 million Norman Foster building, the $500 million Dillard Scofidio building, the $500 million, everything costs $500 million there. And we were headed for the Martin Luther King Institute. Now this was started 30 years ago by Coretta Scott King, MLK's widow, working with a Stanford professor named Claiborne Carson. They started the MLK Institute, and it was really hard to find. We kept going around buildings, and finally we were on the edge of campus, and there was this creek, and it had all these trees by it, and it was kind of cluttered. We were still on the campus. I mean, MLK Institute is part of Stanford, and then we rode up, and I saw it. There it was in front of me. I got off my bike because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to make sure that this was the MLK Institute that I'd heard about, seen on the map. And I walked up to it, and there it was. The MLK Institute at Stanford. I couldn't believe it. It was like a temp building. It was like an old building that was built to be a temporary building and had never been replaced. Now, here's the thing, is the MLK Institute can't raise money for itself. The only people who can raise money for it are the development people at Stanford, and they don't raise any money for it. Professor Carson, director of the MLK Institute, said, "The legacy of MLK deserves better from Stanford." They've got no money. How is this sustained? They have a $2 million endowment, most of it coming from a famous basketball player. And the yield on that endowment is $100,000 a year. That's it. World leaders come to this place. The Dalai Lama came here. What did he think when he saw the Norman Fosters, the Hoover Institute, and then this is the MLK Institute? And it's going to be torn down, and nobody knows where it's going to go. They won't tell anybody at the Institute. They have no plan. It's incredible. Wow. So we rode back across campus to the Hoover Institute, past the Norman Foster, the Dillon Scofidio, the Polshek, these huge palaces. And then there was the Hoover Institute itself, a palace. Look at the two of them. I mean, this isn't a fair comparison because, of course, this thing is, this whole building would fit like into the doorway here of the Hoover. I mean, it's like, right? And we knew this building because this is where they had the great, rare book exhibitions. That's why we went there, or we went up the tower to get the good view. That's how we knew it. But what really goes on in the Hoover Institute? That's where the priorities at Stanford are, obviously. So what goes on there in this palace? It's a conservative think tank. Now, you see, I never knew who Hubert Hoover was until I saw the musical Annie, right? And Annie, there's this number in the first act where these people just like in rags, they're just living on the streets sing this song. "We'd like to thank you, Herbert Hoover. You made us what we are today." Yeah. He destroyed the country with the Depression. You see, I loved Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was my hero. And I used to say to my daddy, I'd say, "Oh, he's great, don't you think? I mean, he saved the country during the Depression, and he won the Second World War. He's great." My father said, no. The Fishers don't like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. No, he was a Democrat. No, we don't like him. He was just a rich boy playing with socialism. And when I found out about Hoover, I was like, well, he was just a rich boy trying to make more money. And he ended up destroying the country. And here is this tribute to him, the Herbert Hoover Institute. The director of the Herbert Hoover Institute is Condoleezza Rice. A former honorary member was Margaret Thatcher. Really? And what are the principles of this conservative think tank? Free enterprise, less government. Okay, fine. Okay, so think tanks don't matter, right? I mean, nobody really cares about think tanks. They don't really do anything. Oh, really? Well, a man named Dr. Atlas is actually a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. And he served on President Trump's White House coronavirus task force, but not at first. In June of 2020, he was still railing against the coronavirus task force of President Trump, saying it had the wrong approach. He said that we shouldn't be supporting face masks and social distancing. He said they didn't work. He said that the lockdown was destroying the country. It was ruining the economy. He said we had to stop spending money. We have to stop spending money on trying to find a vaccine, on testing. We have to stop all that. We have to get back to work. We have to open up the schools again. We have to get the economy going again. He advocated herd immunity. Let's just all get it, all right? And then a whole bunch of people are going to die, but the ones who survive are going to be immune. That's what he said would solve the coronavirus, COVID-19. That's what Dr. Atlas said. And at first, he was an extremist. He was criticizing the Trump government, the Trump administration. He was criticizing them. Well, eventually, they got desperate because they had to win the election. So they brought him into the White House coronavirus task force. He became an advisor on that task force. He became an extreme advisor. And as people started dying again in the fall of 2020, and the states panicked because people weren't obeying any of the regulations and told people you have to wear masks, you have to exercise social distancing, you have to not go to work. If you can possibly not go to work, don't go to work. He said, ignore the states, ignore state government, rise up, resist. He was calling for revolution. Think tanks don't matter? Why was he doing all this? Well, he said he wanted to help the poor and the working class. They need to get back to work. They need to have the schools reopened so they had daycare so they could work. Oh, yeah, really? No, he wanted them to go back to work so they could help the rich Republicans, the industrialists, make more money. That's why I wanted them to go back to work. Well, he didn't get Trump reelected. It didn't work. And in fact, as November went on, he became too toxic even for Trump. So he was forced to resign on November 30th, 2020. Did he have no effect on the Trump administration? Oh, he had a lot of effect. Because isn't that the inspiration for January 6th, when Trump said to his people, march down the mall, go to Congress and take it over, rise up, civil war, revolution, do it. Yeah, that came from Dr. Atlas, a senior fellow at the Herbert Hoover Institute to this day. Now, of course, Stanford tried to distance themselves from him, and the Herbert Hoover Institute. They tried to distance themselves, but I think that was just window dressing. I think they liked that he was doing it, right? Because here they have an advisor in a conservative administration. It shows their efficacy, right? Incredible. And what was he promoting? Free enterprise, less government. So why did he do it? Why did Dr. Atlas do it? Well, I looked at his Wikipedia page and I found out his first name was Scott. I kind of liked him when I found that out. Scott. I mean, Dr. Atlas, that just sounds evil, but find out he's Scott, that makes him a real guy. And I listened to some of his early discussions on the Herbert Hoover Institute channel. And he was very reasonable. He was very rational. He's a handsome guy. He looks like a family doctor. He's very persuasive. But what is he mentioning? What is he talking about? Herd immunity? He never said that a whole bunch of people would die. He just said, oh, herd immunity is going to solve everything. It is sick. Why did he do it? Because I think he wanted to be on TV. He saw a chance to grab the brass ring and he reached for it and he yanked it. And some will say he got it and some will say he yanked him off his horse on the carousel. But this was his big chance, wasn't it? Yeah, rise up. That's his legacy. Why did he do it? Why did I pursue Michael? Why did I continue pursuing Michael? I mean, gay wasn't a thing then, not on a university campus. There wasn't a lot of gay visibility. And I didn't even know I was pursuing him, but I just liked him. I liked him a lot. Our second date did not have a chaperone. We went to a double feature, something that would be shown at the Stanford Theater, right? It was a double feature of All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard. Oh, come on. How gay is that, right? It was in this classroom and it was packed with men, like all men. And the minute the movie started, there was like, oh, go Eve, go Eve. Oh, Betty, you get her. You get her. Don't take it from that little bitch. You get her, Betty. And I was like, oh my God. And I leaned over to Michael. I said, I think there's some gay people here. Yeah, there were in our seats. But it was wonderful. We loved those movies. And our third date was a dream. Our third date was 2 weeks in New York City. I wanted to go to New York so bad. I wanted somebody to come with me. And of course, I wanted it to be Michael because we had always talked about how much we love New York. We wanted to see the rough and tumble, the gritty old New York. We wanted to see it ourselves. And he said, no, 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 no. And I begged him. I just kept begging him. Then he said, yes. And the smile never left my face after that. He went to the university travel agent. He is so great at setting up travel arrangements. And he got us a room on the Upper East Side in a hotel for $20 a night. I couldn't believe it. Now, it was a tiny room and only had one bed. Like when you open the door slammed into the bed. But if the door was closed, we could roll out a sleeping bag and we could take turns, sleeping in the sleeping bag. There was nothing between us. We hadn't even touched each other. We had no idea. We were bringing each other slowly out of the closet. So we packed our bags, we got on a plane and we flew to JFK. And we had all this luggage because we were going to wear like our blazers and ties in Manhattan in the summer. What? We never put that stuff on ever. We had all these bags and this big, huge, old style sleeping bag, and it was all loaded on. And then we got off the plane and we got on the subway headed into Manhattan. And I was just blissful. I was here with my best bud, this guy I was crazy about. I was going into Manhattan, nitty gritty, rough old Manhattan. And Michael said, they're going to grab our bags. I said, who? Those guys. I was like, guys, there's a girl with them. He said, well, okay, those people are going to grab our bags. And there were people staring at us, casing us, signaling each other. I thought, oh my God. So we picked up our bags and we left the car, and we kept leaving cars because they were following us. We went from car to car to car. It's like that old movie, Dressed to Kill with Nancy Allen, where she gets chased through the car. That was us. We were chasing. Okay, so the train to Manhattan was going this way, and we were going that way through the cars, being chased by these guys who were like trying to mug us. And then we would get off at a station, right, in Brooklyn and get on another train, and they would follow us. It was like horrifying. We were an hour being chased around Brooklyn. It took us an hour and a half to get into Manhattan, but it was great. We had our New York experience, and we hadn't even gotten into the Big Island, the Big Apple, Manhattan. It was wonderful. So the years passed, and every year we would go over to Stanford, enjoy the sights. We'd always visit the Herbert Hoover Institute, see what they had in the rare book room. And then we'd usually bike over to the Stanford Shopping Center and get some lunch, which meant that we would ride through that ginormous hospital of theirs that sprawls, right? That hospital sprawls across Stanford, the whole north side of the campus. And my favorite part of it, the center, is the Edward Durrell Stone Hospital. And there was good news last year, December 2020. There was a vaccine. Finally, there was a vaccine. And the first people to get it, appropriately, would be the frontline hospital workers. And Stanford got 5,000 doses. Stanford had 1,300 frontline hospital workers, doctors, nurses, administrators, people who were directly in contact with people who had the coronavirus, people who've been wearing N95 masks since March. And of those 1,300 people, 7 got a dose from Stanford Hospital. 4,993 doses went to doctors with more seniority. Most of them had no contact with people who had the coronavirus. Some of them have been working from home since March 2020, and that's where the doses went. And there was no attempt to rectify it until the doctors, who were the frontline doctors, protested. And they were nervous. They were nervous about doing this. Shame on Stanford. They were nervous because they thought they're going to be recognized. They're going to be blacklisted. Yeah, fortunately, though, they were adhering to rules about face masks, so nobody saw them. It worked out perfectly. Yeah. So we were coming back from lunch that day at Stanford Shopping Center, the day we rode over to the hospital. And what I wanted to see was John Carl Warnke's Kappa fraternity, his Kappa Alpha fraternity. He's a local favorite, a modernist. And we rode up there and looked at that fraternity. Oh, such a wonderful structure. But a few months after that, in 2015, we read about something that happened at that fraternity. On a night in January 2015, Chanel Miller and her sister Tiffany went to a frat party on campus. Their mother dropped them off. And Chanel Miller had a little too much to drink at the Kappa Alpha fraternity, and she blacked out. Brock Turner, who was a star swimmer on the Stanford swimming team, a freshman, then dragged her body, her passed out cold body, away from the fraternity. He dragged it behind a dumpster. She was out cold. And then he attempted to have sex with her. He undressed her. He took off her panties, her bra. He inserted his fingers behind a dumpster. She was out cold. He was raping her, a passed out woman. Two Swedish graduate students walked by. They said, what? They saw it. They stop that, stop it. And Brock Turner ran. One of the graduate students went to make sure that Chanel was okay, and the other one ran after Brock Turner and chased him across the campus and got close enough to kick his feet out from under him and lay down on top of him and held Brock Turner down until the police arrived. Chanel Miller woke up in the hospital. She had no recollection of what had happened, none. There was a trial. Brock Turner's defense attorney tried every trick in the book, demonized the victim, made it sound like she was awake. She had said yes. She wanted to have sex with him. Made it sound like she was coherent, but it didn't stick. There were too many witnesses, too many pictures. There was detritus from trees in her genitalia, in her hair. Everybody said that she was out cold. The jury didn't fall for it. They found him guilty. 3 counts of sexual assault, intent to commit rape. The judge, who was also a Stanford graduate, sentenced him. Now, the sentence should have been 14 years. It was, in fact, 6 months. The community was outraged, completely outraged, and they recalled that judge. For a long time, Chanel Miller was known as Emily Doe, to protect her, like John Doe, Emily Doe. And she wrote a 7,000-word letter, which was printed in the New York Times, expressing her outrage about what had happened to her. But she recently decided that she couldn't do that anymore. So she wrote a book called Know My Name. You must know my name. My name is Chanel Miller. You must know what happened to me, and you must know my name, because this is happening to women all over the country. And this book is a horrific page turner. I hate to say it, but it is compulsive reading. It is scary how compulsive this is to read, because it's like a Stephen King novel. It is horrific, but it's true. It's shocking. And probably the most shocking chapter is surprising, because after everything has happened and she's awaiting the trial, she goes to the Rhode Island School of Design because she wants to study art. She wants to do something that she wants to do before the trial. She's traumatized and she knows the trial will be even more trauma. So she goes to study art. She's always been interested in art. And she's in Rhode Island, in Providence, and she records the comments that were shouted at her by men on the street every day, sometimes 3 times a day as she walked to school. The crudeness, strangers propositioning her, telling her to get into cars, saying things about her body, men in trucks, men in bars, men in front of liquor stores, men just walking down the street. She said it was horrific. She never realized how much of this went on. I was shocked by this, but not surprised. A few years ago, I was teaching a Shakespeare class, and 2 of the students, a man and a woman, were doing a scene where the man was insulting the woman, very sexually characterized insults, right? But it was Shakespearean verse. And I just didn't think they had any sense of the gravity of what was being said. So I said, well, you have to come up with an analogy. You have to think of things that would be said to you now. That will create the sense of offensiveness in you. So I asked the women in the class, I said, if you would you volunteer some things that have been said to you on the street, just to get a sense of how obnoxious these things can be as an analogy. Every single woman in the class volunteered something, some of them 2 or 3, and I could not believe the graphicness of these comments, the specificity about what men said to women about their bodies on the streets, complete strangers. And some of these things were incredibly creative and grotesque. And I sat there for 10 minutes listening to these comments. It was shocking. The book is full of many shocking things. This rape was not the first traumatic incident in Chanel's life. She went to Gunn High School in Palo Alto. And Gunn High School is a place where there's a lot of pressure on the students to get into a good school, a ton of pressure. This is also the place where, when Chanel Miller was a student, 10 Gunn High School students threw themselves in front of the Caltrain, committed suicide by jumping in front of the train. There's no surviving that. I was thinking, this is my romantic train that takes me down to Palo Alto? This train kills people? I was shocked. She made it through high school. She didn't commit suicide. Many of her friends witnessed all this, and she even knew some people who did, but she made it through. And she went to the University of California, Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara, which I know because when I was a kid, my parents used to take me there to the Alumni Vacation Center. And we stayed in the dorms. And right next to the dorms was the little beach town of Isla Vista, which is where students stayed when they moved into apartments in their junior and senior year. Yeah. And so I knew Isla Vista really well. And Chanel Miller was living in Isla Vista when she's going to UCSB. And that's where that young man, Elliot Rodger, went on a rampage. This is the guy who posted on YouTube his videos talking about how women had let him down. They'd kept him a celibate. None of them would sleep with him. Society had let him down because it wouldn't let him have a sexuality, and he was going to get revenge, and he did. He loaded up his car with a bunch of guns and he headed into Isla Vista. He went to a sorority, he knocked on the door, they wouldn't let him in, so he shot 3 women on the front lawn. He killed his 3 roommates. He shot a guy in a convenience store through the window, and then he just drove his car around Isla Vista, running people down. He ran down bicyclists, women on the sidewalk. He shot at cops. It was outrageous. And eventually he got shot himself by the cops, and then he blew his brains out. 7 people dead. Chanel was sheltering in place during all this, and she survived that. But she didn't survive Stanford University in her hometown. She studied art at the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD, because she'd always been interested in art and drawing. And when her book came out, she explored her art further. And the inaugural piece in the new Asian Art Museum's new wing is by Chanel Miller. And it's not visible, or you can't go in the museum and see it now because of COVID-19, but they put it in the window. You can see it from the street. This amazing mural. It's called I Was, I Am, I Will Be. And of course, it's about her struggle, her journey, right? Here it is in vertical. I was, I am, I will be. And then it's in horizontal right there. This was not displayed in one of Stanford's many museums. They haven't apologized to her yet. And I was looking at it and thinking, wow, what a journey. And what great things she's done with it that don't erase anything. The pain in this book is outrageous. It is, as I say, you can't put it down. But the spirit of her to write the book, to write the letter, to claim her name back, and to do this work of art. It reminded me of another artist. This is an artist that we stumbled across on the Stanford University campus, and that was Benjamin Bufano. I grew up in a town that had a Bufano as its mascot. There's this beautiful bear in front of my town. And it was this beautiful Bufano sculpture. And one day we were riding around Stanford and there was a Bufano. And it wasn't on any of the maps, any of the art guides, nothing. It was just there. It was behind this cafeteria, sort of under some trees, surrounded by tables for the students to eat their food from the cafeteria. It's called Shadows of the Future from 1937. And it depicts a couple emerging from something that looks kind of apocalyptic, a war-torn landscape, to rebuild civilization. And this isn't acknowledged anywhere by Stanford. And we walked around behind it, and it's not in very good condition. The front of it was dirty. There was trash on the ground around it, not at all like the other outdoor sculptures we'd seen. And here's the back of it, which is kind of like beat up and worn. It hasn't been restored. We're trying to figure out what that was about. Well, Bufano was a man who was into peace and social justice. Now, those aren't really Stanford principles, are they? He was anti-war. Well, of course, capitalists like war because you can make a lot of money during a war. Yeah. And so somebody must have given this to Stanford, and they have tried to ignore it because it is a neglected statue. It's treated like junk. And it's not on any of the maps. Look at that. Surrounded by picnic tables. We went down to Palo Alto just before COVID-19. It was the boom time still. The economy was booming. But it was very hard to find all the restaurants that we enjoyed. A lot of them were struggling. Why? In Palo Alto, with all that money, all those people want to eat out? Well, the restaurateurs were finding it hard to staff their restaurants. Some of them were going to shut down. You see, none of the people who worked in the restaurants, the waiters, the cooks, the people who seated you, who got you your wine, your water, none of them could afford to live in Palo Alto. So there was nobody to staff the restaurants. And the people who went there weren't willing to pay more to support them. There was no housing left for them, except in one place. There were a bunch of campers that lined Camino Real, right next to the campus. And they'd been left there by the police because that was the only affordable housing left in Palo Alto. In other words, the police graciously weren't arresting people and impounding their vehicles, because if they did that, there'd be nobody to staff the restaurants, to clean up, to staff the university. Palo Alto and Stanford might just well fall apart. Back at school, Michael and I stayed up one night during finals week, all night long. We went to the Greek theater, that wonderful old Greek theater. It's built like a real Greek theater. If you took down the Roman Skene, all the scenery behind it, you would see the city, just as the Greeks saw their great city from their Greek theaters. And we hung out in the Greek theater. It was open in the middle of the night. And we could see the Campanile, our great tower. That's like our Hoover Tower. And when college ended and we moved in together in San Francisco, it was always Berkeley that brought us together. And I've often wondered about this thing between public and private schools and the tensions that exist therein. And what does it mean when people like me and Michael, who love universities, go and have fun at Stanford and don't have to pay because everything's free? But what is the apparatus that supports it? Are we supporting that apparatus by enjoying the artwork? So many liberal artists with liberal perspectives supported by this rich institution. And yet they've got somebody at the center of the Trump administration spreading dangerous information. Herd immunity. And I won't exonerate my own university. There's a book about it, Imperial San Francisco, and it attacks UC Berkeley, on and on and on. I wonder a lot about Stanford, with its overt commitment to free enterprise and less government, with its eulogizing of people like Margaret Thatcher. And what guilt do I bear loving it so much? Not just the heat, but the culture it facilitates, the buildings, the sculptures, the art. It is a tribute to little Leland Stanford Jr., but it's a dark tribute in many ways. There are some outtakes from tonight's presentation, some little tidbits that didn't make it into the main body of the piece. I've thought a lot about this university over the years, and I'll make a full confession. I didn't apply to go there as an undergraduate. I didn't really even know about it when I was 18, but I'm sure glad I went to Berkeley because that's where I met Michael. But when I was a graduate student, I applied to Stanford University. And I went down for an interview and I was met by the office manager. And usually I love people who work in offices because I think they make everything happen. They know all the answers. But this guy gave me a tour and he questioned me on what I wanted to write about on my creative side. And while he did it, he ate a jelly donut. And the jelly kept spreading around his mouth and he would shove it into his mouth with his fingers and lick around. And then he kind of like shot down all my ideas, my scholarly ideas, my creative ideas. He just sort of ripped them apart very intelligently. But I was like, could I talk to a faculty member? I mean, I feel like I'm just being criticized and I'm watching you eat this jelly donut. I did get to meet a faculty member, the great Carl Weber. He was a professor there and he was charming as anything, but obviously he had no say in anything. He was retiring and he just met with me because he was a nice guy. In retrospect, I'm glad I didn't get into Stanford because I wasn't really a PhD. I was more of an MFA and I was able to do that at Berkeley. And I had a great experience at Berkeley. And I only realized how lucky I was when I was at Berkeley and I was allowed to be so creative. And I don't think that ever would have happened at Stanford because I think I'm just too gay when I put on a play. Alan Bennett, one of my favorite writers, has written about the tension between public and private school. And he gave a presentation, a sermon at King's College at Cambridge. And he talked about private versus public, and he abhors the privatization of Great Britain. He said that he wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for the national health, that they saved him a number of times. And that the privatization of the country is exemplified in its public schools. They call them public, but they're private for us. They're public private schools, places like Cambridge. And he said when he went to Oxford, he felt that he was surrounded by thugs, by louts, by a bunch of pompous rich kids. And he said that until we nationalize the schools, until every school is available to everybody, there won't be enough money for the public. Everything will go to the private. And I really believe that. With all the private schools in San Francisco, all the money's going to them. The parents pay taxes, but then they send their kids to a private school and all their money goes into the private school. Whereas if their kids had to go to a public school, guess what? The parents would contribute to the public school like many parents do. The public schools could only afford to get better. It's a debate that goes on in this country. And we have to solve it. Joan Didion just had an article published. She wrote in 1968, and she wrote about how she didn't get accepted to Stanford, and she was crushed. 3 of her friends were accepted to Stanford. She wasn't. She was devastated. She couldn't speak. She was numb. And so she decided she would go to her second choice, UC Berkeley, but she had to take extra classes to get into Berkeley. So she went to summer school and took classes. So that kind of tells you something right there, doesn't it? She was at UC Berkeley and a friend of hers who had gotten into Stanford asked her to write a paper for him. He didn't want to write his own paper. He just wanted Joan Didion to write a paper for him. So she wrote a paper for him. She put it in the mail and sent it to Stanford. He turned it in. Good old Joan, that paper, that little bit of plagiarism for this kid, got an A. Well, she took her own paper that she'd written for the Stanford kid and she turned it in at Berkeley. She got a B. I love that story. You know, I had a friend who had a play produced in Palo Alto. It was at the Theater Works. And it was a great production. It was gay. It was just the gayest thing of all time. It was a gay Cinderella story. And I loved it. It was wonderful. And he was on stage and the audience loved it. They loved seeing these 2 gay guys fall in love. But there were a couple of scenes that had this snap queen who came from New York City. And he was the friend of the Cinderella type guy. And he came from New York City and he sat on a park bench and he said the naughtiest gay things. I thought they were a riot. And he said them right to the audience. It was as if he was sitting on a park bench in Palo Alto talking to the audience with these naughty gayisms. The audience didn't like that one bit. They laughed through the whole rest of the show, but whenever that guy came on and sat on that bench and said those funny things, they just stared. What about gay life at Stanford University? Well, gay liberation, the George Segal statue, yeah? Somebody recently left the Stanford swimming team, another swimming story, and he said he was leaving because he didn't like the way gay people were treated in the sports. At best, at Stanford, they were patronized. He thought Stanford had a lot to do, a lot of thinking to do about how it treated gay people. I definitely recommend going there. The museums are unbelievable, and the art is breathtaking. The weather is great. We just have to remind ourselves that in some weird way, we're contributing, right? We're making it all possible. Well, here's my apartment in Haight-Ashbury. I'm still here. I'm still with Michael. UC Berkeley gave me everything wonderful in my life. So a tribute to UC Berkeley. And when COVID-19 lifts, we'll probably go back to Stanford. I don't know if there's a rivalry, but I feel like somehow I won. Thank you very much for joining me. My name is John Fisher, and this has been The Farm, which of course is a nickname for Stanford University. You're a terrific audience. It was a pleasure performing for you tonight. This audience has been wonderfully supportive. People have been donating money, and it's really helped keep our theater go during COVID-19. We have a bunch of programs coming up. We have another show. I do a solo show next Thursday called Cats. And it's all, yeah, it's cats, but it's not that cats. It's cats ! And it is about cats. So join me next Thursday at 8:20 right here on Facebook Live and Zoom. It's a free performance. Also, we have a reading coming up in April, and we have our big benefit, pandemic performances coming up with a host of totally cool talent. And that's a COVID-19 Zoom broadcast performance. It's free. We hope you donate. We hope you have such a good time you donate, but it's free. We've got some celebrities checking in, Leah Delaria, Margaret Gomez, Danny Shea, Daryl Stevens. It should be really, really exciting. Raphael Mandelman. And we hope you can join us for that. So if you'd like to make a donation to our theater to support all these programs, we could certainly use your help. You can send your donation by check to me, John Fisher, Theater Rhinoceros, at my COVID-19 address, 91 Central Avenue, number 102, San Francisco, California, 94117. Or you can go on our website, therhino.org, therhino.org, and make a donation through PayPal. You can also find out on the website about all the stuff coming up. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. It's funny, I only perform for Little Green Lights, but I really do feel the presence of a live audience. So thank you. Thank you once again for giving me that wonderful experience. Good night.